Hi folks, it is Thibaut Van Dam here with another YouTube video, and for those of you who are not familiar with my channel, I am a DIY singer-songwriter and also guitar tutor based in Southeast London. Today I'm very excited to be back on my channel talking specifically about music equipment today. On my channel I usually play original songs and I do lessons about playing guitar practically and with music theory and stuff, but being a DIY artist I have to deal with a lot of technical stuff all the time and record myself, so because of that I started to do videos also about gear, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing a 1-year follow-up video of the AKG K371 headphones. These are headphones that I bought about a year ago, last January 2023, and I did a video about them and I was really impressed, and now that I've used them for a year, I have some of the opinions that I had before have been reinforced. Some of the opinions that I had before have changed. And I should say also that something about the headphones stopped working. So I want to talk about that in this video and sort of talk about where I'm at now with deciding what the next sort of set of headphones to go with might be. And so if this sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned. Please consider liking the video and subscribing. It's the best way to stay in the loop. And it of course keeps me motivated, letting me know that you like stuff like this, you want to see more stuff like this in the future. Thank you to everyone that does subscribe. It really does mean a lot. You know, I have 350 subscribers now, and that's quite a bit, and it's a lot more than I used to have, and I just see people subscribing all the time now, and so that's really exciting, and thank you. It really does mean a lot. It's why I show up, because I know people are watching videos like this, and so let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm just going to start by talking about the headphones, doing kind of an overview. These are closed back headphones, and they're sort of targeted at people who work in kind of environments where there's going to be recording or audio engineering involved. And so for the most part, there's quite a lot to say about it, but if you want the kind of big overview that I did before, I'll put a link somewhere to that video. I just kind of want to synopsize that these basically offer tremendous value. When you buy these, you get the headphones, but you also get a bag that also has 3 cables with it. The bag is really well built. The cables are well built. One of the cables isn't the best, but basically 3 cables, 3 cables. And the headphones are nice. When you look at them, you can see that there's kind of different materials. This is after 1 year of use, and you can see that they're looking like you might not think that they were used for a whole year, actually, especially when you look at the pads. Pads are the thing that most people expect to wear down the most over time, but you can see that these basically look like new, I would say. And so they've held up particularly well. I'm pretty surprised. The majority of the design is plastic except for the yoke system, which is a really nice metal. This metal really reminds me of the same metal that's used on the AKG K371, which is a microphone that I have that has this kind of, the new ones have this kind of metal that has a coating on it, and it's just really nice and it's very strong. Like it has no give at all. So when I first got the headphones, the things that I really liked, I liked that the cable was detachable. I really liked the comfort and the fit. I felt like it really worked for me. The clamp force, I liked the material of the pads. I was a bit worried that the pads, being so soft, were actually going to be quite fragile, but they've actually held up with the test of time, which is great. And so then finally the sound was exceptional. I thought that they sounded really, really great and very neutral. And for closed back headphones, they really offered a really useful tool in a studio setting or in a home recording setting, in that they basically offer good isolation from other sounds, but also that they also insulate the sound, if that's the right word to use, I'm not really sure, but basically that they're keeping sound from leaking. The sound leak isn't that bad either. So they're really great for lots of practical purposes. And then the fact that they offer quite a neutral frequency response basically means that they're quite good at things like auditioning different mic positions, things like that. I've used them now for specifically recording with. So if I'm tracking as the artist who's being recorded, I've also used them for setting up mics. So this is something else that I think people should consider, which is your specific use case. And I'll probably come back to this over and over again, but basically, whenever you listen to music, of course, you have the source, which is the master recording, and then you actually listen to it, but in between those two things is whatever system you listen with. So if you listen with in-ear monitors, if you listen with headphones, if you're listening with studio speaker monitors or through the speakers on your computer or on your phone, whatever it is you're listening with is contributing to the sound you're hearing. And it's important to recognize that, because actually oftentimes people just take it for granted. They say, oh, I love that song, and they think about the song. They don't really think about the system through which they listen. But even right now, I'm speaking through a microphone, and when I speak through a different microphone, I sound different. And I quite like the sound of this microphone, but my point is basically whatever you're listening through is going to contribute to the sound quality you're getting. So with the AKG K371s, they sound quite neutral in that when I listen to songs I was very familiar with, like Beatles songs that I'd listened to since when I was a kid, they sounded really familiar. Everything that I remember being there was there. And so I would say that they're quite trustworthy in that way, that they're the fidelity, they're true to the audio fidelity of the original sound you'd expect. And even when I listened to my own mixes with these headphones, all the decisions that I made were really apparent, not only in terms of frequency and where I was placing things with frequency, but also in terms of the stereo image was pretty good too. And so they're really useful for that. And I think that basically they're just about the perfect headphones. But I mentioned earlier on that I ran into a problem, and I need to talk about that because actually the headphones have unfortunately stopped working. And so I want to talk about what went wrong. So I thought it was going to be the pads that gave way. I thought also maybe it was going to be this sort of right here, this area, this joint. I've seen people post photos where the joint is broken from doing this. That didn't happen. So I can't actually see that happening. I see when I expand it that I see that, if I can get it in focus, I can see that there's a little bit of like an opening there, which is not like the most reassuring. But what I can say is that it was none of the things I thought it was going to be. The thing that it was actually was right here. So if you look inside this section right there, that's the cable that connects to the driver, and that cable is running through the headband into the left channel where you connect with your cable, your mini XLR. And this cable, I tend to adjust more than the other one. I tend to do this and then put it on, and then I tend to adjust like this. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because basically the design is actually really smart. Basically the yoke system, this really durable piece of metal, protects the cable from being snagged on anything. Genius. It's a great idea. It works really well. And of course it doubles in its utility that when you do this, or when you do that, or when you do this, that it's protected. So it makes sense that it's a good design because it's doubling the feature. It's protective as much as it is also a utility. So it's not like anything's wasted. The problem I found though is when it's extended fully like this, it's adding tension to the cable. And I have to assume, because this is what happened, I have to assume that doing this constantly resulted in this driver stopping from working. It no longer works. And the reason that I think it was this cable is because at one point when I started cutting out about 2-3 weeks ago, I noticed it. And then I noticed that when I, that thing that happens with really cheap headphones is when you do this, and you get in the right spot, then it starts working again. It was infuriating. But I found that it was doing that. And that when I send it one click back like this, it was working, and then it stopped working, and eventually it just doesn't work at all now. Now, I'm sure that for anyone who's tech savvy, this is a pretty simple fix. And so, this is the detriment of the headphones. Now, I'm lucky in my case because I bought these just under a year ago. I bought them at the end of January 23. It's sort of mid-January 24. So these are still covered by the manufacturer's warranty. And so because of that, I'm actually able to return them to Amazon where I bought them and get a full refund, which is kind of shocking. I wasn't expecting that. I did also reach out to Harman/AKG, who sort of do repairs, and they basically said that I had to go through their specialty thing, which is, I think, called Sound Music Tech. It's the company, they wrote back and they said I have to get back to Sound Technology. Sound Technology I've dealt with before, and they will make repairs. They did a repair on the 414 microphone that I have, and they will do repairs, but you'll pay for the shipping and things like that. And it's just a little bit, even under warranty, you'll pay for the shipping there, and you want it to be tracked and you want it insured, of course, because these things are expensive. So it didn't really show me a promising repair pathway to contact AKG. The dilemma I'm facing is basically, do I buy these again or not? One of the things I need to stress is the low impedance. Low impedance makes these headphones easy to drive. And by comparison, the higher impedance DT770s, they're harder to drive. They're fine to drive if you have an interface like I do. But the problem you'll run into is when you're in the tracking stage and you're just setting up mics and trying to get a good sound, you need quite a lot of volume because the signal of microphones is quite a lot lower than, mixed and mastered music. So one of the issues that I ran into is that when using the DT770s at 250 ohms, that you really have to crank it to hear what it is you're doing. Now, maybe not everyone has this issue, but if you're trying to record yourself and you have kind of a, an intermediate or entry level interface, like I use the Audience ID44. If you use something like that, you'll get enough power to drive them, but you'll need more than you think if you're doing tracking and if you're trying to get a good idea of basically the recording volume and you're trying to get a good idea of the sound. The other problem that I ran into with the DT770s, by contrast, because that's what I'm debating now, is do I buy these again or do I go for the DT770s? They're really well built, but the issue is kind of not their V-shapedness, but the emphasis and clarity on the high end. It's a useful feature to have, but what I was saying before is that as a system through which to monitor, they don't actually offer the most, the fidelity, how true that sound is to the original recording. It was less true than basically any of the other headphones that I have, in that when I was listening with them as a consumer, it's really exciting because you say, wow, this is so clear and it's so open and the sound stage is really good. But the problem, and then of course you notice things you didn't notice before. You say, wow, that tambourine is really excellent and all these high end things, and you can hear the voices and everything better, but it's like an enhancement. And if you're trying to position a microphone to give you the best guitar sound or something, you're going to be fighting against the headphones the whole way through, because you're going to say, well, is it too bright? Or, and you're going to be setting the microphone up in a way that's either too bright or kind of too dark, or you're always going to be thinking about that. And so you're not going to be thinking really about setting up the microphone to get the best guitar sound. You're going to be thinking about the microphone as it goes through the headphones for the best sound. And that's tricky. Now, if you're like working remotely and you're taking the mics and everything with you, which is something that I've done recently, then you won't have a monitoring setup. So you're going to be depending on the headphones that you have with you to give you an honest, kind of an honest rendering of whatever sound you're getting through the mic. And if you're auditioning different mic positions, you might run into some issues. And it occurred to me something else, which is probably why people go for the DT770s specifically as an engineering thing. I think they're useful for the talent. So if, for instance, you are a performer or a singer or a songwriter, something like that, and you are going to be recorded, then they're really excellent headphones for a handful of reasons. One, they inspire a lot of confidence. So when you hold them, the majority of the build is metal. So if you're a performer and you go to a studio, performers are very sensitive. I'm a performer. I'm a songwriter. When I record myself, when I do it myself, I feel quite comfortable. But when you do it in front of someone else, someone you don't really know that well, or someone you're paying to use the studio space, you need to be inspired with confidence. You have to feel like you're working with the right person, that your performance is good, that they're not judging you and saying, God, this guy's music is so terrible. You really want to feel confident when you're in a studio environment as a recording artist. And so the thing is, the DT770s fulfill that role really well for lots of reasons. For one, the fact they're brighter kind of gets you hyped up, gets you engaged with the recording process, and you say, yeah, I'm excited about this. That's important. Another thing is that actually the headphones are really well built. So when you pick them up, when you put them on your head, you'll say, wow, this feels professional. I feel like I'm in a professional, serious recording environment. It literally is like putting on your recording performer hat. Just like how engineers have their kind of mixing hat or their production hats or whatever, the performer can literally put on a thing on their head and say, I'm switching gears, I'm about to give a great performance. And so the headphones satisfy that role. But I think, for instance, with mixing, they add clarity. But the thing is, you're going to be questioning things, I think, more than you are going to be saying, I have a great understanding of what's going on. Now, you could, of course, learn the sound signature of the DT770s, and I don't think that's a bad idea. But basically, it's going to take you time, and the question is the opportunity cost. Are you going to spend more time kind of learning the sound signature of the DT770s, or would you rather just have something more neutral to start with and just jump right in and start focusing on what really matters? Like, for instance, the mic position, or was that the take? That's really the priority when you're tracking. You're trying to get the best take, you're trying to get the best sound at source, and so those things require basically something that's going to give you a neutral response. You shouldn't really be thinking, oh, are the headphones interfering with my interpretation of the sound, and then you're not even thinking, was that a good performance actually? Did that make me have, the goosebumps and everything? So it's difficult to decide if I'll go for the DT770s. The other thing worth pointing out is that they don't have a removable cable, and if I wanted that, I'd have to go for the 700 Pros, which still costs like almost twice what the 371s cost. My concern about the 371s, of course, is that this is a design flaw. This is actually something that is liable to happen by virtue of the adjustment. Now, it just so happens that I have, a fairly large head, and so the result is that I usually am wearing these headphones where they're fully extended, and the result is actually, if I'm wearing these headphones fully extended, then the problem is that, the cable's always under tension, always under stress, which basically means that I wouldn't be surprised if I ran into this problem again in the future. And so the only solution I can really think of is if I bought them, I think Amazon offers, an addendum service, which is like an extended warranty, 3 years that you can pay for, and it's like $10, I think. I think that might actually be a good solution. Ultimately, the longevity of the equipment you have speaks to its efficacy. If the equipment doesn't last, but it's really good, then what's the point of it being good if it doesn't last, basically? So that's the other consideration. Another thing I just want to say kind of randomly is I was using the ATH M50s again, these old Kens, and I bought these, I swear to God, in 2016 or maybe 2016, maybe even earlier, to be honest. I got them on eBay. They were labeled as like new or something, or B stock, basically. I've since replaced the pads. The thing that failed with these was the hinge, the notorious hinge problem with the M50s. But I went on eBay only last night and I found a kind of a hinge fix thing, which is a 3D printed moldable thing, and you just snap it into place and it apparently resolves that. So that was like £6, I think. So I thought, that's a good investment. Why don't I just buy that? And I did. And that way I can get reacquainted with the ATH M50s, which actually, when I looked at ratings.com and looked at the frequency response as it compared to the 371s, and actually if you compare this, and I'll put a link in the description, but basically if you compare the ATH M50 frequency response to the DT770s, they'll say that the ATH M50s have a more neutral response, which I think is true, actually. And then when you compare the 371s to the M50s, you'll see that the 371s have an even more neutral response. And it's also the build of them that they have quite good clarity. So the M50s lack clarity, but they are more neutral. And it's worth pointing out that I recorded my entire first EP, and also, I did my first EP exclusively with these headphones, and then I did my album with these headphones and also PreSonus Eris 3.5 speaker monitors. And so actually they were pretty satisfactory. I didn't, they were unremarkable in a sense. They lacked detail in certain things, but the reality was that they weren't conflating the sound of my guitar one way or another really all that much. They were just sort of unremarkable. But I think I can live with that. So for the time being, while I'm deciding on if there's any other options, then I think I'm going to while I'm still waiting for that, I'm going to still use the ATH M50s, especially just to see if the fix actually works. Because actually, for me, I think that is probably my best solution at this point. But let me know in the comments below if you've used the AKG 371s, if you ran into this specific issue with the cable. Let me know what you think what's a good alternative. The ATH M50s cost about the same. They also have the replaceable cables, so a lot of people are quite excited about those. But in my experience, the original ear cups they were super oral, so they went on top of my ear. They were quite uncomfortable, even though they had the 1 pound of clamp force. That was something that I really didn't like, and it was more distracting to have that. It's crazy because the clamp force is quite low, but actually the pads make them uncomfortable. So maybe they've changed that. Maybe there's good replacement pads. I'd be curious if there are good circumoral replacement ear cups for the ATH M50s. Let me know in the comments below, and let me know if there's any other models that you think are a suitable alternative to the DT770, ATH M50, and 371 Triumvirate, because to my mind, like, these are the 3 absolute best options right now for maybe, let's say, under 150 pounds. And I think, if I was to spring, maybe I'd get the 770s, but, get them, converted to have a detachable cable, or maybe I'd even get the 700 Pros. I've heard decent things about those, but realistically, I was pretty shocked with the 371s as far as sound performance go. And again, the impedance, I think, is something to hang on to, because having low impedance means that they're very much so more fitted towards a tracking utility, that when you're in tracking and the microphone signal is a lot lower, that actually it's very useful to have a lot more volume at your fingertips, because you're going to need it, basically. Whereas the DT770s, they have a higher impedance, which is good for actual clarity and sound and stuff. And you'll notice it in the high end, like the clarity when they're properly driven is just, it's fantastic. But the dilemma is that when you're tracking and you're trying to get mic position set up, you're going to run into things like a lack of juice. Basically, you're going to say, I need it to be louder. And so, you know, and then the question is, are you thinking for yourself as the performer, or are you thinking of yourself as the engineer? And if you're engineering someone else, you can crank it, you know, but I think you might run into some issues basically if you're the performer. You know, if you don't have enough volume at your fingertips, you're going to say, can you make it louder? And it's going to be like, I don't know. Obviously, the solution to that is if you power it, if you have a headphone amplifier that's even more powered than, you know, your common interface. But these are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, remember to give a thumbs up. Remember to consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to stay in the loop. And thanks so much. I'll see you at the next video. Ciao for now.